Welcome to this explainer. We eat every single day, usually without giving it a second thought. But what actually goes on behind the scenes? Today, we're taking a super vibrant, detailed look at the human body. We're going to trace the incredible, totally automated path of digestion down a literal biological highway. Let's get right into it. To truly understand our own biology, we kind of have to start by asking a really simple question. What exactly kicks off this fascinating, unseen process every time we take a bite of our favorite meal? I mean, you take that bite, you chew, you swallow, and then you probably just forget about it, right? But your body, man, it is just getting to work. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the digestive highway, then the buccal cavity and stomach. After that, we'll meet the vital glands, and finally, wrap things up with the intestines and beyond.
Okay, up first, the digestive highway, understanding the route.
The entire human digestive system is actually built around this one central continuous structure called the alimentary canal. It's quite literally a biological tube that starts right at your mouth and goes all the way down to the anus. If you were to somehow stretch it out, it's essentially one massive, long highway. Your whole digestive system is basically this huge canal, just combined with a few really important glandular rest stops along the way.
Moving on to part 2, the buccal cavity and stomach. The descent begins.
So the mouth isn't just an opening, right? Anatomically, it leads into what we call the buccal cavity. The second food enters here, it immediately encounters saliva. And saliva is incredibly important because its main job is wetting the food. It takes what you just chewed and turns it into this slippery little ball called a bolus. Once it's nice and slick, that bolus leaves the buccal cavity and makes a really smooth descent down the esophagus, which you probably just call your food pipe. It's basically a perfectly automated chute.
And where does that chute lead? Well, welcome to the J-shaped chemical lab. As the food drops from the esophagus, it lands straight into your stomach. Now, anatomically speaking, your stomach actually has a very distinct J shape. But listen, it is not just some simple holding tank. This is our very first major chemical processing lab on the road trip. Inside this J-shaped stomach, the food gets introduced to gastric juices. And these aren't just any regular juices. They are highly specialized. They are packed with enzymes like pepsin and heavily lined with mucus. The stomach unleashes these gastric juices to kick off the heavy-duty breakdown process of that partially digested food. The mucus is super cool. It acts like a shield to protect your own stomach lining, while the pepsin goes straight to work, completely dismantling the food structure.
All right, on to section 3. Meet the vital glands, the chemical helpers.
2. That is the exact number of distinct lobes. You've got a right lobe and a left lobe that actually make up the liver. And why is the liver so incredibly important? Well, because it holds the heavyweight title as the absolute largest gland in the entire human body. It's this massive vital organ just sitting right next to the digestive highway, constantly preparing its own special chemical concoctions to aid in our digestion. So we actually have 2 main helper glands working in tandem here. First, that massive liver we literally just talked about, it secretes bile juice. And it's super efficient because it stores any extra amounts of that bile right next door in a tiny little sac called the gallbladder. Meanwhile, you have the pancreas. It's this neat, leaf-like structure that readies its own crucial fluids called pancreatic juices. These are absolutely packed with vital hormones and enzymes, including insulin and glucagon. So you've got the liver brewing bile, the pancreas brewing pancreatic juice, both just waiting for the food to arrive down the highway.
Let's move to section 4, the intestines and beyond, the grand finale.
Okay, so with our helper glands fully loaded and ready to go, the partially digested food leaves the stomach and enters the very first part of the small intestine. We call this section the duodenum. Think of this area as a massive, grand mixing bowl. All those powerful juices from the liver and the pancreas, they perfectly collide right here with the food coming in from the stomach. It is this huge chemical mixing event, and it's absolutely essential for the final digestion of literally everything we eat. After that grand mixing in the duodenum, the food just continues its journey. It winds its way through the rest of the small intestine, specifically moving through sections called the jejunum and the ileum. Once it has successfully navigated that incredibly long winding road, it transitions right into the large intestine. And the large intestine has its own distinct sections to travel through too. You've got the cecum, the colon, and finally, the rectum.
And just like that, we have reached the end of the line.
Completing its massive journey through that continuous alimentary canal, the final remnants undergo their very last bit of processing inside the large intestine. Whatever is left over at this point, the system waste, finally exits the human body via the anus. The entire continuous tube, from the very top at the mouth all the way to the exit, has completed its job perfectly.
Isn't it just absolutely amazing how this continuous automated assembly line works so flawlessly inside you every single day? But, it does beg a really fascinating question. How do the specific foods we choose to eat, or the literal trillions of bacteria living inside that massive highway, actually alter these complex chemical labs? The next time you sit down for a meal, take just a quick second to appreciate the incredible journey that food is about to embark on. And honestly, wonder who is really in control of the road trip. Thanks so much for exploring the human machine with me today.